With the start of the new school year, so begins peer pressure and kids being increasingly introduced to the world of vaping. We're joined by Dr. Galiatsatos, National Spokesperson for the American Lung Association. And we're so glad that you could join us because this seems to be an issue, a problem among our youth at increasing levels. Are we seeing any downward trend by any chance?
No downward trend at the moment. It seems to be kind of an uptick over the last few years. And that's why we're having this campaign. And we're having it strategically now. It's back to school, right? Every parent, every child is thinking of their kids' future, of their health, of their education, right? Those kids are leaving in order to be the better version of themselves. So we want to take this moment to really drive home a movement of having parents being confident to have the conversations with their kids, to talk about vaping, and really help these kids understand how to say no, both in the context of real life with peer pressure and in social media. We think parents are the solution to combat those peer pressures.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was astounded to learn that 2 million children are vaping nowadays, and it sounds like they're choosing vaping and e-cigarettes over traditional tobacco products.
Correct. And look, at the end of the day, we want them to choose breathing in fresh air over everything, right? So this isn't a conversation about alternative that, some kids will come to me. I'm a lung doctor. I take care of a lot of youth who vape, and they're like, well, it's safer than cigarettes. And I tell them, like, that's fine if you're an adult and that's the version that makes sense to you. You're young. Your lungs are still developing. Any chemicals you're introducing now will rob you of your health later on. That's the point that we're trying to emphasize. These kids are in a pivotal moment of their life that their adulthood is going to be depending on the actions that they make now. These lungs are developing, right? Their brains are developing and susceptible to these addictive chemicals. So we want to make sure they make the proper best choices. And by doing it, by making the parents feel as confident as possible to have those conversations.
And when you're talking about those developing lungs, the developing brains, so what kind of an impact are these chemicals from vapes and e-cigarettes are having on a child's health?
Well, we'll start at the brain, right? The brain is very susceptible to nicotine at that moment because that portion of the brain development, this prefrontal cortex, still is molding itself until about the mid-20s. So anytime you introduce a chemical that can hijack that, well, it's going to look to make it more permanent because it's going to be such a reward for that part of the brain. So it's going to reinforce that behavior over and over again. And I'm saying this because if you talk to adults who smoke traditional cigarettes, they're in their 50s or 60s, what they all had in common, they began in their youth and high school years and middle school years. So it got them hooked now. And then in regards to the lungs are constantly faced with, these other harms, right? From pollution to viruses it's got to fight off. And now you're introducing vaping, it's going to overwhelm these lungs. So the ways I tell parents to look out for potential signs of vaping in your kids is, hey, there's a cough that doesn't go away. You have an athletic child and suddenly they can't keep up with their peers, right? You can hear wheezing. Right, it's already having noticeable impact in their lungs. That's going to make them potential future patients in the future. That's why we're so invested in making sure we can protect these kids as much as we can from vaping.
And in addition to other chemicals, formaldehyde. These vapes use formaldehyde in their solutions as well as acrolein. What is acrolein?
So yeah, these are chemicals that are found in industries and factories. These are chemicals that go into cars, into cadavers, and suddenly we're saying we're going to put them in our lungs. So we want to be as cautious as possible to make sure the kids understand that these are dangerous chemicals and don't promote health. And for parents out there, talkaboutVaping.org is the website that we've created to give the parents the confidence and the education that they can take in order to have those conversations with their children. Not just one time, can't be a one-off.
Sure.
It's got to be consistent.
Got to be consistent. And what are some of the signs that parents should look out for? Because oftentimes children, they like to do these things in the shadows. They don't want to see it. They don't want adults to see them smoking. So what are some of the signs that would tell a parent, you know what, I suspect my child may be vaping?
Yeah, and these are very non-specific, but what I would suggest is if they keep having more of those discreet, secret going away in order to do it, just ask, hey, what's going on? Is something, because it could just be normal teenage behavior too. And then look for the physical signs, right? They caught a cold and their cough hasn't gone away. You can hear wheezing. They're not keeping up with their peers, at exercise and recess. Look for those signs. And at the end of the day, just ask, is everything okay? What's going on at school? Have you been asked to vape? Like, just ask. At the end of the day, you may not find the clues you need, but just be confident in your conversations with them and have it now. right? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to give these kids the best health, one breath at a time.
And you know, South Carolina, they rank a little bit higher in the nation as far as children who are using these devices to get their nicotine fix. And so we really need to hammer that home. What is the website one more time?
The website is talkaboutvaping.org, and I would employ not just parents, but any adult who's invested in the next generation of kids, right? To make sure that they go into their future as healthy as possible. Coaches, teachers, grandparents, go to the website, learn about this, and take this moment of the campaign and make it into a true movement.
Dr. G, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Take care.
We're back after this.